This conference will now be recorded.
That wasn't a command. He takes the minutes off his fast. Oh, you're recorded. Transcribed.
Okay, we're going to start. Okay. So, all right. I'm not going to need it because I know you guys aren't out around.
I think it might be two.
Yeah, I know.
It might be chance.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Would you please increase the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
We've been talking to ourselves for so long. It's kind of nice to have an audience, at least temporarily. So,
The roll call, shall we?
Here.
I'm here.
And Diane is quote unquote running a few minutes late, so she
Okay.
doesn't
We'll be
have
here when
to
she's
wait any
here.
second.
Okay. So there's an agenda before us this morning. And if there are no objections, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Or questions? Anybody online? Okay. All right, so I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Are there any comments from the public or requests for future agenda items? Anything that's not already on the agenda today? Anybody in the online peanut gallery? Any comments from the directors? Got a nice note from Paul Rosenblum, who was on our board for a little while until he went to India.
South
Korea.
North, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
He
I
wasn't
didn't
sure.
see the
He just assumed
reason.
it was South, right?
Yeah, hopefully it's South Korea. Anyway, and he did a really nice job for us while he was here. And I also wanted to mention that we have a new insect in Borrego Valley. The tamarisk beetle has arrived. It was started as an experiment, I believe, in Utah, and then it went to spread to the Colorado River, and no one was sure how it would travel beyond the river, but it's here. And the reason we know that is because the tamarisk trees are dying. So if you go around and you see brown tamarisk trees, that's the tamarisk beetle. And I mention that because it's good for our water tables.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think Dave did. I think Dave spread it.
Yeah, he might have actually quietly brought them, but we're not. So I'm seeing a lot of trees starting to turn brown, and it's all, I mean, it's for those who wanted cameras for windbreaks. But anyway, it's going to solve some of the issues of how much water the cameras.
And was that the intent? I didn't know the agenda, but was the whole beetle developed to kill tamarisk trees? Was that
So they introduced it because, you know.
Sorry, Steve.
For instance,
It's the beetle exemption.
For instance, it's the Colorado River, you know, was just covered all up and down its banks with cameras, and so it helps with abundance of water. So it's a good thing. But it's related to water, so I thought I'd bring that up. All right. correspondence received from the public?
Just that nice little thank you note. And so the note was just Paul Rosenbluth said thank you for, we sent them a resolution and a plan. A shirt.
You did a very nice
So
job
thank
for us while I was here.
That was
I think we have his email address. All right, so we'll move down to section 2, the items for board consideration and possible action. And our first item is the public forum, where we're going to select the alternate for the community representative for the water master. And so there's a process involved, and do you want to introduce?
Yeah, I'd like to. You know, unfortunately, Martha resigned.
Yes.
Martha ever resigned from anything? Is this a first? But yeah, obviously she does a lot for the community, so it's good that she's managing her workload, right? Anyway, but it's great for her. I'm really happy. But it leaves a very important position open. Mark needs a right-hand person as the community rep alternate on the water master board. Mark has to travel, and it's sometimes not in places where internet is fully accessible. So to have a backup is very, very important. Plus, it's nice to have 2 brains, 4 eyes looking at the various issues from the community perspective. So, although Martha's departure leaves us with a sad heart, it also creates a really cool opportunity to kind of bring somebody new into the water world, so to speak. And so, in the judgment, Steve and I and Shannon's pride and joy, we were smart enough to think through the process for appointing the community rep. That was clearly defined, and then there's a section in the judgment that says any reappointments should follow the same process used to make the initial appointment. Section 4-7. And so if you go back to the way it was originally done, that's Exhibit 7, I do believe, in the judgment. And it basically says, well, there were a group of organizations that were involved in the GSP development, and those organizations would be a logical group to provide the nominees. And the local organizations were sponsor group, stewardship council, state park, and the school. Okay, so Exhibit 7 is pretty clear. 3 of the 4, the first 3 need to submit 2 names, and the school needs to submit at least 1 name. And those names get submitted, and then a public forum is held. The judgment was real specific on encouraging water master board participation. So as soon as I knew about this, I got Sam in the loop and sharing the news. I think I sent an email to the water master board members to make sure they knew about the public forum today, because everybody is important. And the judgment specified their input being an important part of this process, but it's totally up to the BWB board to then deliberate and make the appointment. So, been communicating with all the affected parties basically the day I received Martha's resignation, because it'd be good to have no lack of coverage. Thinking about it in hindsight, I would have said, hey Martha, did you wait 30 days to give us a little bit more time? But you know, the good news is, thank you to Becky for the sponsor group, Bree for the stewardship council, Ray at state parks, and Mark at the schools. All responded relatively quickly. Becky had to go through a process, but put it on her sponsor group agenda, and each one of the groups came up with the required number of names prior to the agenda going out last Friday. So thank you very much to all those groups that turned that around really, really quick, because I didn't know if that was going to be possible. But it was just weird that kind of the day I sent out that first email, I think Becky was saying, oh, I'm working on the agenda tonight or something. So the timing just happened to be perfect to get things on the next meeting if that needed to happen. So thank you very much. So following the nomination process, 3 names surfaced. Jim Beck, and Gary Haldeman. I had heard that Gary Haldeman might be interested kind of early in the process, so I reached out to Gary and said, hey, are you interested? And he said no. So when he showed up, I think it was on Becky's list. I checked with him again and said, you were on the sponsor group list. Are you now interested? And he said no. So basically, yes, the lack of available time. So we're proceeding with the list of 2 candidates. Mr. Dax and Mr. Romers, thank you very much, guys, for accepting and participating in this process. We'll try to make it as fun as we can, right? Board members, this is not a stress test. You know, we've been through this with appointing BWD board members recently. We just really appreciate you being interested. We're not here to create stress for anyone. We'll try to make this as easy and simple and as Word fun, as fun as possible. If that's even possible. So we are gathered here today to have the public forum, the board deliberate, and make the appointment. When I see you here in a couple hours, I think they're all driving out here today. So I think that's it, Madam President. I think the floor would now be yours. So basically, we'll do a little Q&A. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and go through the outline that had all the details in it. Thank you.
So as Jeff said, we're going to have a little interview and choose a new alternate member for the Water Master Community member. And I wanted to thank Martha for her, she's not here, but I want to thank her for her service. She, after more recently, as things started to get more technical, she felt like this was maybe not her wheelhouse. But she's putting all of herself into the new resources center over at the mall. So we're really, her energy is still high. It's just in a direction. So anyway, I would like to ask each of the new candidates, Jim Wormers and Jim Dax, to do a little introduction on themselves and who you are and what you're interested in. And we'll start with Jim, just a little. Jim Wormers. Oh my gosh, there's Jim and Jim W and Jim D. You may start, Jim Wormers.
I'm Jim Wormers, and most of you know me. I've been involved in the community for 30 years now. Came out here to build Desert Shadows, invited out next to Piazza, and have lived there since 95. So I'm a member of many groups in town. Became probably involved, I don't know, all in the center, and my wife and I are on the New Year's right now. I'll be up in October. I work with Martha on many committees. I'll see her today at distributing food at the food bank, resource center. I'm a member of the board there. And I became probably interested in water shortly after coming to Borrego Springs because it was the aquifer issue and the non-believable part about it. People just denied that it's being depleted. And so we went to all the early meetings. I was a member of the Water Coalition Forum and stayed with it through the adoption of the plan to reduce water proportionately across all of the pumpers in order the simplest way to get to 5,600 feet. When we started getting on the technical part and the legal part, I opted out of the discussion. Went on to my other interests.
Good morning, I'm Jim Dax. I started coming out here actually in high school in 72 or 73, I'm not sure which year, from Los Angeles, and fell in love with, or made a big impression, and then later came back quite a bit in the 80s when I moved to San Diego. Built a house in De Anza in 2007, I think, and still have a home in San Diego and still work a bit there. But I am now full-time in Borrego as of really the pandemic. I've been attending Water Master Board meetings pretty much since the inception, maybe a few meetings later, primarily to represent the sponsor group, which I'm a member of. It's a lot to learn. I'm trying to get up to speed. There's a lot of issues that are very complicated, but I believe that this is an important role. I think Mark's doing a great job, and I'm happy to just be there to offer assistance.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to do an interview for each candidate, and I guess there was a short straw drawing, I guess, for who would go first, and that selection was Jim Wormers. So I would ask Mr. Dax to step out of the room for a few minutes, and we will interview Mr. Wormers and then bring you back. trade places.
Short of that one.
Jeff will make you comfortable.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a order of folks that will ask questions of you, Mr. Wormers. We have, first we'll allow the water master members to ask questions, then the public, and then the board will ask questions. As far as the board goes, we'll just do the in order and until we're tired of it, until James tired of answering questions. With that, I will ask that if there is any water master board members who would like to ask a question of Mr. Wormers. Questions?
Oh, sure, I have questions. No, I have to start. First of all, I'm very clear that both Joes love Borrego in the right way. So that sort of threshold's already been met. But it would be helpful for me to understand out of all the different things that you have on your plate, all the different opportunities to serve this town. I've had a chance to do it a little bit with our children's center work, but the question is, why does this appeal to you today at this time?
Of the existential issues, the Borrego Springs water is at the top of the list. I'm really happy that Mark is representing the community because he's very knowledgeable of both the water issue and the community's needs and the needs of Borrego Springs. I'm also really happy that Jim Baxter is having the ring. I think he too is very community motivated, inspired, and will do a really good job selecting. I put my hat in the ring because we need to have multiple hats in the ring. I think I could do a good job. I am busy. I wear 10 hats in Borrego. But it's mostly because it has to be done. Someone has to be there to support the community side. So I'm willing to throw my hat in the ring.
Give what's needed to be done to all the busy people, allow it to get done. Thank you.
Questions, Mark?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for putting your hat in the ring. I know you have your hat in a lot of rings. I worked with you on the Borrego Village Association from the early days, and I always have admired your attitude of lack of any kind of selfishness toward this community. You're always looking to improve the quality of life here, and you've always stepped up, in a very generous way with your time and support, and it's very much appreciated. I know that whatever you do it well, and I have nothing but great things to say about you. Could you go over your involvement in the stipulated judgment, and have you read through that and familiarized yourself with all the elements of the issues facing the water master over the last 3 years?
I did an initial reading of it when it came out. Really interested in what the actual EPA allocations were, just from a fundamental understanding. My biggest concern, and I'm really happy to see that the Water District has stepped up and purchased, or is in the process of purchasing, water credits, EPA allotments. I think the number, okay, to answer your question properly, I think we had to go about it the way we did, and to give everyone an equal chance to reduce their water proportionally or get paid for backing out. Otherwise, you're looking at it, go find it out. It's hard enough to get the EPA to get the stipulated agreement done. But it presents challenges still. The water district went from its 2,600 allotment of whatever it is, BPA, and and then it's using about 16, but we have to have some room for growth, et cetera. And it's only going to get 1/4 of the 26 to start with, so it needed to buy and still needs to buy more water in my mind. I think ultimately, if we're going to have growth, even to build homes at Grant Hill or anyplace else, we have to be able to move it slightly above the 2,600, probably, and above the 1,600, maybe up to the 26, in order to actually have enough water to have the town be a viable town for the near term. I know that the impact is going to come out of the agriculture primarily. I'd like to be able to see an agricultural component remain, only because I think it'd be good to have like basically farms to table. I'd like to be a transition in that if I had my perfect world, where it's not exported out of Borrego Springs and grapefruit or some other product or palm trees, that it actually is something that would stay here so people could learn about food and sustainability, and also cut down the carbon footprint of importing food and exporting product. But as far as the technical part, I haven't really studied it, only when I need to study it. Like I helped the answer with the understanding of how it works when we're needing this giant chart to show our water reduction over time, and how you have to pay on an annual basis for the water that you're consuming in order to cover the $500,000 amount that it takes to do the public accounting. All very complicated things, but necessary. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again for being here.
Any other questions from the water master board?
Are there any water master board members calling? The mic can't see.
I can't see who's online. Anybody from the water master online that wants to ask a question? Are you satisfied with your questions as well, Jen?
So
Thank you.
Are there members of the public that would like to ask questions? Go ahead.
I wasn't really planning, make it possible for you to hear me. I wasn't planning to ask a question actually, but one just popped in. So I'll say it. If you did end up being the representative for the community to the water master board as an alternate, what's your thoughts about having meetings or briefings with the community about those meetings, about what's happening at the water master board apart from the meetings themselves?
I think it is an important element. I would like to see the community more represented, actually. I'd like to see the community more involved, I can say. I think they're well represented with Martha, but I would like to see a higher level of understanding by the community. And that's a two-way street. There has to be a community discussion about the water issues, as well as communication from the water master representative to the community. I don't think there's a full understanding by the majority of the citizens of Borrego Springs about how it works, or what the impact of the water will be over time, or any other items. And it's a slow learning process. It takes a lot of time to understand. And I think it's better for people to start getting, or continue to get that, not to start getting it, so that they are not freaked out when the real impact hits in a few years. It will start hitting.
Could I ask Mark or yourself in one or two sentences just to remind me or inform me and educate me as to what the Water Master Group does? And how many are there on the Water Master Group?
What the Water Master does.
Yeah, what is its remit? What is its mission? What is it supposed to do? I'm not ignorant, I don't know.
Well, we're represented in the community by one person from Recreation, which is Shannon Smith, one person from farming, which right now is Tyler Delvitt, was Mike Seeley. And the county is represented by their hydrogeologist, Jim Bennett. The Borrego Water District is represented by Dave Duncan. And then we have a community representative, which is myself, with formerly Martha Dagler as the alternate. And she took over when I had medical issues and when I traveled. She did a superb job, which I was very, very thrilled to have her. And the community representative basically works through the Borrego Water District. They are nominated and voted into that position by the Water District. And we are seeing through the 20-year program to scale back water pumping and consumption in the Borrego Valley aquifer to the tune of estimated around 75–76% reduction between now and 2040. So we have 17 years to go, and we work, I think overall we work in a very cooperative manner in our meetings. We have monthly meetings, we have special meetings when they're called for. Tomorrow we have an open house for 3 hours at the library in the afternoon prior to our Water Master Board meeting, which begins at 4:30. That is an attempt to bring the community, into interaction with the Water Master Board. And during COVID, we weren't allowed to have that public face-to-face forum. We've had, I'd say, fairly good participation with the public via Zoom meetings. But we have one in-person open house at the library in the fall, and we have another one tomorrow. So I think in the overall schedule of things, we hope to have 2 of those per year. I'd say we had moderate participation at the last open house. I think some people were still reluctant to meet face to face. Hopefully tomorrow we'll see an increase in participation. And the open house is an open forum allowing people to ask questions of the Water Master Board and the Water Master Board consulting firm, West Yost, who has a technical consultant available. And they have their own lawyer and the executive director who's been hired by the Water Master Board. And very often members of the Borrego Water District are in attendance, and Jeff Poole attends all our meetings via Zoom or in person. I agree with Jim Wormer that we'd love to have more interaction from the public, but over the last 50 or 60 years that I've been here, you notice that in water meetings or fire meetings, public forums, that people don't get up and get involved until it really affects them personally. Like, why should I go down and talk in theoretical terms unless I'm a farmer or golf course operator, or I see my water bills creeping up? So we would like more interaction with the community to get their opinions. Martha was very strong in her role in the community, and one of her strengths was her inroads that she'd made with the Mexican American community and the parents of school kids. So that was a nice aspect, and we couldn't ask for better representative, think of them as an alternate.
Well, it sounds like extraordinarily detailed. In summary, do you have any formal or legal authority, or do you advise the state? Do you advise, how do you act?
I suggest that the public ask questions of our candidate.
Oh,
Sorry, we should not,
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to.
we should not have this, we can have this discussion separately.
Yeah, all right.
And you could refer him to the webpage.
Yeah, just, that's, you're welcome to ask questions of Jim.
Sorry.
And the meeting tomorrow, actually. That would be a great place for you to learn about the governments.
We can find out more. All right, so any more questions of the public to the candidate? So I'm going to ask the board of directors to ask any questions they might have of the candidate. We'll start with Gina and go through this direction today and until we're satisfied and ask some questions. So Gina.
What do you see as the biggest challenges for the Water Master Board in the next couple of years?
Next couple of years.
Or 1 to 2 years, whatever.
So far, I don't see it hitting the real problems yet. I think everybody's still kind of sorting out how things are. Farmers are trying to figure out what they're going to do and what their path of economic success will be. So as long as there's not a lot of issues, I have not been going to the Water Master Board meetings, but I think the first couple of years we sat doing the technical part, and everybody understood what they were doing and working through some issues. And then after that, it's now just sort of operating and keeping track of things. I think that if an issue comes up, right now there haven't been the conflicts that could come later, because with the water district being able to buy supply, that will not create the issue that it would if it was unable to purchase supply. I think it's like remarkable that like Deanza is cutting their water use in half. I think that will also postpone issues until later when they need to buy enough to cover their balance, and the water district needs to cover their balance. And if some partners maybe don't want to leave, that's when the crisis will hit, as far as that portion of the crisis.
Diana?
We've already covered a lot of the other questions we came up with. First,
You can create one if you want.
yes, I'm trying to do that. So, pushing further out from Gina's question, where would you like to see Borrego, say, in 2040?
Well, first I'll be happy to see, if I live that long, that the aquifer is in balance and it's sustainable, albeit there could be minor adjustments due to climate change, but basically will be in balance with our 5,600 acre, and it will be used hopefully in a balance that works for all different aspects of the community. I think we could have a community that still has water for its residents. We could have still a recreational component, especially if all the recreation optimizes their use of water and minimizes their use. And I could see we could still have an agricultural component, which would make it a very balanced community. I think that would be kind of a perfect world. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, Jim. In your role as the community rep, you are the voice of the community to the Water Master Board, in addition to Mark. How do you see yourself gathering inputs from the community and formulating that voice?
Well, one of the things that's also happening is the community is beginning to take up the discussion on many levels. Besides the forum tomorrow, it's the sponsor groups radar, and it's at the ESC, it's the school district, the the Prop 68 grant, and a lot of that money in various ways of distribution of the funds is for education and learning. It's a two-way street again, to both share with the community what is happening and and to get responses back of how they would perceive the impact to be. So in an ideal world, we'll learn a lot of that over the next 18 months through the Prop 68 outreach and input process. And then if you learn that from the public as well as from other agencies and other needs, then you'll be able to put that together and represent that, the voice of the people.
Right. We didn't share questions ahead of time.
No, we didn't. I'm kidding. I did think about that, and I'm glad you asked it. And I'm going to ask the really simple one. The Water Master Board meets at 4:30 on the second Thursday of the month. And are you able to make these meetings on a regular basis? Right now, they've been online, and they have a couple each year that they try to do in person.
That's probably one of the more interesting questions for me, because for the last several years, every Thursday, starting around just before 6, Ann and I have led trivia at the Anza, and then it's very popular. 100 people show up on Thursdays to do it, and it creates a sense of community. I am getting tired of it, and it's not, and she doesn't let me offer things that she's not. But we have put out this year that we're asking some people whether they would like to step up and do it as well to supplement us. So if what we've had to do, like with the mayors, we've had to go to a Thursday. We usually have those sundowners on Thursday. Fortunately, they're over, or we leave early, and they're over, so we can get out at 5:30. I don't know how long most Water Master meetings go, so I don't know if I could accommodate both. That's also been an issue with the sponsor group that unfortunately I've only attended 2 in the last year. But that probably is a challenge that I would have to work on.
I will say that that because the Water Master only meets once a month, the meetings can go into marathons.
They're not as long as these meetings.
Well, but they are. More than a couple hours. Thank you, Jim, for your honesty on that. Okay.
Jim, welcome. What's your understanding about the purpose and the function of the Water Master Board?
The Water Master Board is, I'd say if there's something in charge, it's in charge of this process. It is the group that has to make decisions within the constraints of the stipulated agreement to manage the transition to this 5,600 acre feet. It's like the legal authority or whatever.
We are the court.
Yeah.
We are the court. But beyond just managing the judgment itself, I think the people need to start to understand that we are also empowered the same as a groundwater sustainability agency would be according to Sigma. So not only are we managing the judgment itself, but we are acting as a groundwater sustainability agency itself, which has other duties and obligations beyond the stipulated agreement. So it's a pretty broad area of responsibility that the Water Master Board has. A lot of folks think that it's just about the judgment. Well, it's not. It's beyond the judgment in terms of being able to manage the basin in accordance with Sigma itself. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Board? So Jim, we thank you for your interest, and And I thank you for being willing to sit in the hot seat and consider to be a candidate. So I'm going to allow you to depart if you wish, and, or wait in the other room, and we'll bring Mr. Dax back. And so for the rest of us, out of fairness to the candidate, please remember the questions that you've asked, and we'll ask you to ask them again. Just to be fair in terms of what we ask them to. Following our interview with Mr. Dax, we will, the board will deliberate and make a selection.
Kathy, can I say something quickly? I apologize for being late, but I wanted to make sure it gets in the minutes that Diane Johnson showed up.
Oh, okay. Well, duly noted. Thank you.
You're filming the record.
We deliberated public forum and voted public forum will be camera.
The board will deliberate and vote.
In public.
In public.
Mr. Dax, hello, good morning, and thank you for your willingness to be a candidate for the alternate position for the community representative of the water master. It's, it's a wonderful way to provide service to the community. So we're going to ask you a series of questions, and then so we'll try to not have it be a hot seat for you.
Okay.
We do have questions. So I'm going to start with, we have 3 groups of people here today that are going to ask questions. We have members of the Water Master Board, we have the public, and we have the Board of Directors for the EWG. So we're going to start with the Water Master and have them ask the questions of you that they want to ask. So, Mr. Smith.
We followed the same orders last time?
Okay. We might as well.
That's fair. Jim, as I said before, this is a duel between 2 gyms that love Borrego equally, and so that's not what that's about by any stretch. But I guess what I was just curious about, you have attended a number of water master meetings, but what at this point in time makes you particularly interested in serving in this role of administrative judgment?
Well, I will be honest, I didn't wake up one morning and inspired to become the alternative community representative. People approached me and asked me to do it. I see that there's a need, and I do love this community, and so I do picking it up as a way to give back. I feel that I've attended almost every meeting. So if I missed it, I've gone back and watched the recording, which I'm very glad that we are now recording the meetings, because it's a good way for people who miss things to go back. I think it's a very important body. I think everyone's doing good work there. I'm optimistic about the future and where we're going. I think you guys are doing a good job to get us there. As far as what qualifies me, it's just a willingness to, I don't have any expertise in the area. I kind of learning as I go along. As I said earlier, there's a lot to learn, and I am making a diligent attempt to learn.
Thank you.
I would like to compliment you on your diligence of attending almost all these meetings. I see your name on the Zoom list, and I hear your comments, and I'm very impressed with the amount of study that you put into the stipulated judgment. I appreciate your efforts. Can you describe to us how much background work that you have done? Have you read the stipulated judgment? Are you familiar with that entire document and its nexus with Sigma and regulations?
I've gone to the Water Master Board site a couple of times and looked at the documents. They are obviously quite lengthy. I am late to this game, and I will say that, I know that some people were in the early stages and they were help craft the documents. So I've read them, but I can't say that I've studied them at length, but I'm definitely aware of the intent, which I think is the more important thing. And I'm certainly willing to go back and do additional homework.
I appreciate that, and I also want to thank you for being here today and sure being willing to serve. Appreciate it.
So my question had to do with communication with the community, and because the position is the alternate community representative to the Water Master Board, and what your thoughts are about facilitating that.
Yeah, I have tried to think about that a bit, and I think it's a difficult one. Unfortunately, in our community, there are people like you who do a great deal, and then there is the public, and the outreach to the public needs to be stepped up somehow to hopefully get them more involved. I know that I have posted things occasionally information-wise on Facebook, 92104. It tends to become contentious, unfortunately, so it's not necessarily the best way to disseminate. I do think that talking to Nikki at the Sun, getting articles published there about things that are happening. I know that when we have the farmers market, there could be a table there for information, but I would say it's a tough task to disseminate the information, but I think it needs to be worked on to improve. I don't know how many people will be attending, for instance, the open house tomorrow. The last one, there were just a handful. So I did mention to Samantha at West Yost to do as much outreach as she could in that regard to get people to come.
Any other questions from the board?
Jim, you built a home in Piazza. Do you live here full time?
Yes, although it's more recently. So I built a home in De Anza, then I later sold that and remodeled a house in between De Anza and town. And I still maintain a house in San Diego because I also have rental properties that I work on. So I'm still somewhat involved in things in San Diego, but I've spent 5 days a week maximum in San Diego the last 9 months. I've been here most all the time.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public online that wish to ask Mr. Dax a question?
Who's managing our online connection? Do we know if they're not muted?
No comments online.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more?
Yes.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say about your position as a member on the Borrego Springs Community Sponsor Group and how that might facilitate or somehow inform you or something?
Well, I think that one of the things I'm concerned about as a community member is water quality going forward. Thursday morning, Andy from West Yost, John Peterson, myself, and hopefully Margaret, because this email just went out, we'll be going out to look at identify wells to add into the monitoring program. I think that would be my focus in terms of, John's on the sponsor group, you're on the sponsor group, but bringing information back to the community in terms of not just water quality, but also water quantity testing that's being done to expand that program. The only other thing would be, further ability to discuss issues from the Water Master Board to the community through the sponsor group. That could be maybe a part of the meeting, that there's a brief comment on things that are occurring.
And you do sit on the water subcommittee of the Borrego Springs Community Sponsor Groups.
Right, with John and with.
there are no other questions from the public, we'll go back to the board. Yeah.
Jim, thank you for being here.
Sure.
What do you see as the biggest challenges for the Water Master Board in the next year?
Probably the issue of expanding the water quality monitoring and quantity. I know that they're redoing the model a bit right now. I think the biggest thing is really equity for everybody in the basin, and that includes, in my mind, the plants and the animals. So I mean, we're doing a study about that, the groundwater dependent ecosystems, and I think that I'm optimistic, so I think all these things are being addressed, so I feel good about
it. I'll ask the same question I asked Jim Wormers, which is where do you think Borrego might be in 40 years? But I'd like to just bring out a little more of Jim's involvement with the WATCO, as we call it, the water subcommittee of the sponsor group. There a lot of information gets exchanged back and forth. And Jim is also outward facing for Borrego at political structures elsewhere. Can you, like in San Diego, and can you?
Well, I've been to San Diego since '84, so I've helped different people with campaigns and other things. And one of the people that I have some relationship with, Tony Atkins, and talking with her staff, there's going to be, I think, next year a water bond for basins like ours, which hopefully people will get involved in to make sure that as an adjudicated basin, we actually are qualified for those funds, since we are a unique basin, and that can be a problem or a good thing.
And I think you've talked with Jim Bennett a few times.
Yes.
So.
Yep. Just in terms of giving him feedback, I think when I first attended some of the meetings, I didn't know that where he stood on things, so I called him after a meeting and he took the time to talk to me about things.
So, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to bring out that the community representative, once you get a good feeling for what the community wants, can then represent that to the broader polity, as it were, to the county and state officials. Thank you for that. So, yeah, where do you think Borrego might be in 2040?
Well, hopefully which is the goal, a sustainable status that we are able to have an economically viable community for the people who live and work here, with a combination of everything that we have now, but maybe at a different rate to some degree. I think there will probably be a bit less agriculture, not just because of the lowering allotments, but because of climate change and because it's just going to be a harder thing to do when you're paying for your water. But I think that there will still be room for some that do it very carefully. So I think that ag can still be there. Obviously, recreation will be there. It's important. I think the park is, the one thing I haven't mentioned. I think the park is obviously what we are all here for. And I think it's extremely important that the park is having enough water to maintain visitation and a healthy tourism business.
Thank you. Hey, Jim.
Hi.
I have a question also about community outreach, which we talked quite a bit with my questions with Becky. Can you tell me within community outreach and in your job, should you be in this position, representing the community to the water master, what do you see in all of those things you talked about with Becky and also with Diane that you would be personally responsible for? What part do you feel in this role you would own?
I think I'd have to sit down with Mark and maybe do some brainstorming to come up with that answer. Right now, I'm not completely clear on a vision for that, so I can't really say a specific thing that I would be responsible for without, I don't know, for instance, I'd like to talk to Martha and see what kind of things she was doing, but Martha approached me and asked me if I would do this, and I said I would consider it, so I haven't gotten a job description. So I don't know what ideas might be brought to me, but coming up with something myself, I'm not sure.
Not my little one. That was, you know,
Martha, yeah, that's
obviously
what,
Martha was
yes.
a big communicator to the Latino community. But there's other ways to approach that as well.
Yes.
And my question is, the water master, as you know, the board meets typically at 4:30 on the second Thursday of each month. And and of course, water master tries to do a couple of meetings a year in person in Borrego Springs. And we would be interested to know if you're able to make those meetings on a regular basis.
Yes.
That's kind of obvious since you faithfully attended as a member of the public. So, and thank you for that.
Sure.
Proofs in the pudding.
So Jim, what is your understanding of the purpose and functionality of the Water Master Board?
It's a group that represents the different interests and that signed on to the agreement. So it's, community, recreation, agriculture, the county, the water district. And it's to come to agreement on the issues that govern our basin and to reduce by 5% each year until we get to sustainable yield in 2040.
Well, I'm going to make the same comment I made to Mark. A lot of folks think the responsibilities of the Water Master Board are exclusively to manage the judgment, and that is not true. We are in fact empowered with the same responsibilities and obligations as a sustainable groundwater agency, GSA. So a lot of the things that we do, a lot of those responsibilities are beyond the scope of judgment itself, but we are in fact, required to act as if we were a groundwater sustainability agency, and that might entail things going beyond the scope of the judgment. So we have a rather broad scope of responsibility beyond the judgment itself.
Sure, and I think that's important that you mention that.
Good.
Any other questions from the board? Well, Mr. Dax, we appreciate your time this morning, and we appreciate your willingness to serve if you're selected.
Okay.
We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I will gather my stuff. I'm a big note taker, however, the secret here is to refer to them again.
Madam President,
Yes.
you really shouldn't excuse, you should invite the other candidate back in when you're deliberating. You should have both of them, unless they have somewhere else to be, they can certainly be. You don't have to.
Thank you, Steve. I was just about to say that.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I think that Jim. Okay. Yeah, I thought he was I'd have to go up to food distribution. Multitasker. All right, so we've heard from both Mr. Wormers and Mr. Dax. Is there, who would like to start?
I'll be happy to start.
Okay.
I do, as much as I think that Jim W. is capable, whatever duties or responsibilities he might see in this position, I am a little bit concerned about his availability. Like you indicated, the meetings sometimes run long. We discussed budget items and things like that. We have gone over 3 hours. And I am just a little bit concerned. He's a busy guy. He's a busy guy.
And we appreciate that. Anyone else? Do not be afraid to speak. Gina?
I appreciate, I think we have two great candidates. And, you know, continuing on what you said, Dave, I think Jim Dax has been attending the Water Master meetings on a regular basis, which kind of gives him, to me, a leg up in some of the knowledge and being available for them. So for me, looking at it, I would just say that kind of tilts the scale in Mr. Dax's direction. So I appreciate both of you applying because you both would do a great job.
Any other comments?
I echo what Dave and Gina said. Jim Dax and I have had pretty long conversations over the last year or so about the water situation here. I know that you're very interested. And it's been good to see a new person diving into the scene here. I didn't say diving on purpose, sorry.
No fun.
Right. And I'm going to point out that we're going to have Jim Werber's involvement. In any case, you just are involved. So I don't, it's only a choice of title in effect. I think with you, Jim Werber's will still be paying a lot of attention and can help with community outreach, for example, to the Piazza community. That's a good chunk of our residents here, as well as like through the Community Resource Center. We've been very involved. So to be clear, I guess I'm leaning towards Jim Dax also.
I agree with everything you said.
I echo the board. I do think, I know that Mr. Wormers was very involved in the water coalition and the water for GSA in terms of coming up with the groundwater management plan. And what I do appreciate that Mr. Dax has a new set of eyes on what's going on here. And sometimes that is more important than having started from the ground up. And I also think that outreach, that there's, new ideas about outreach that could reach through the sponsor group, through, social media and other types of things that would be a new way to try and reach out into the community, which is a constant problem. It doesn't matter if it's water or whatever else might be going on in this community. Getting the word out on things is really, really tough, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges here. It's not just a language thing, it's just, I don't know what it is, but it's a very big challenge. Communication is always the biggest challenge, no matter what group you're working with. So I think I need to entertain a motion to select a candidate here for our.
I move that we select Jim Dax as the candidate, or as the
Representative.
As representative, the alternate representative.
The alternate representative on the water master.
I'll second. Is there any more discussion?
Other than I would like to give Mr. Burgers an additional moniker as gadfly in chief.
Yeah. Yes.
Involved in a lot of stuff, and I appreciate it.
I second that. I don't think I've been anywhere in this community where I haven't seen at least one of the runners somewhere involved.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I applaud your decision. It was well thought out. I'm really happy that Jim threw his hat in the ring and has been attending meetings and is available. I think he'd be an excellent candidate. I'll give him and Mark and the board my full support and the water master board.
So are there any other comments, discussion from the members of the public?
Just to compliment the board and particularly Mark, I know personally. Our community, I think, is extremely well-directed and in very good hands.
Thanks. I'm just looking forward to the funds from the Prop 68 outreach that are really water related, the connection getting made here. As you know, talk to each other, please.
All right. Does anybody in the online audience have any comments or questions? All right, then, I am going to.
No, thank you. That's awesome.
I am going to call on a question. And the question would be, the motion is to elect Mr. Dax into the alternate position as a community rep on the water master. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? You are selected, Mr. Dax.
And the confetti comes down.
Where are the balloons? Thank you very much, and I know that you will work together to be great community reps. We look forward to seeing your activities in the community. Thank you. All right.
Are we dismissed?
And if you don't want to stay for the budget.
One of them's gonna live in shackles, and the other one gets to go free. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's free from one last thing, but there's more. But wait, there's more.
We put Mr. Dax in shackles.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks all. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Marty. Thanks for coming.
Good to see you, Job.
Thank you very much. Good to get that. A quick turnaround, thank you.
See you.
Madam President, the next two items, third one, budget and audit.
Appreciate it.
If you don't mind, I would love to block the two items. Just because our auditor, Mike Zizzi from Leaf and Cole, is kind of queued up to do an audit presentation, and so he doesn't have one up to see the budget presentation. I just love to flip flop B and C.
Is that okay with
Talk about the audit
the
first. And then like,
Then we will skip over to item C, the audit, the 2022-23 audit financial statements. And you're online. Okay. Hi, Jessica. You want to introduce our speaker this morning?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm not there in person today. We have Mr. Zizzi here from Leaf and Cole. They are the firm that has been conducting our annual audits. We have gotten our draft audit report, which was included in the board package, and Michael's here to do a brief presentation, answer any question the board might have. Esmeralda, can you make Michael the presenter for this one, and then I'll do the next agenda item since we switched them. Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully I've done this properly and you're seeing my mouse scrolling around. And so my name is Mike Zizzi. I'm a partner with the firm of Leaf and Cole. We had the opportunity to conduct the audit of the Borrego Water District this year, and I'm here to report on that audit. I'm going to cover the independent auditor's report, which appears on pages 1 through 3, and then I'm going to briefly touch on the cash flow statement. And the reason that I do that is because it gives you a lot of information in a brief amount of time, and eventually pretty much everything flows through cash. So I think it gives you a good overview of exactly what's going on and what's transpired. So without further ado, on page 1 is the independent auditor's report. The first paragraph of that report indicates exactly what was it that we audited. Well, we audited the statements of net position, statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, the statements of cash flows, which we'll cover, the statement of fiduciary net position, the statement of changes in fiduciary net position, and of course the notes to financial statements themselves. The statements related to the fiduciary net position are related to the assets held for the benefit of Community Facilities District 2017-1. Second paragraph of that report states that in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented and that they are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The next paragraph indicates the standards that we followed. We followed auditing standards that are generally accepted in the United States. We also followed the state controller's minimum audit requirements. We're also required to be independent of the Borrego Water District and to meet the relevant ethical requirements. Furthermore, we believe that the audit evidence obtained is sufficient and appropriate to support our opinion. The next paragraph indicates that management is responsible. Again, I want to stress that management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of the financial statements. That includes the design, the implementation, and the maintenance of internal controls that are relevant to preparing financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. New this year, management is required to evaluate whether conditions or events considered in the aggregate raise substantial doubt about the district's ability to continue as a going concern for at least 12 months after the date of the financial statements. The next paragraph indicates that our objectives as the auditor were to obtain reasonable assurance. I always drag that word out. I want to make sure we understand that it's reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue a report that includes our opinion. Reasonable assurance is a very high level of assurance, but it's not absolute assurance. The risk of not detecting material misstatement from fraud is higher than from error because fraud would include or would necessarily represent an intentional act. The next paragraph states that in performing the audit under generally accepted auditing standards, these are a few of the things that we do. We exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism. We identify and assess the audit risks and design and perform procedures that are responsive to those risks. So your audit is a little bit different than everybody else's audit because we tailor our procedures specifically to you. We obtain an understanding of internal control in order to develop those procedures, but not to opine on internal control. We evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies used and the reasonableness of any estimates made and the appropriateness of the financial statement presentation. Much like management, we are also required to conclude about the ability to continue as a going concern. The next paragraph addresses what's known as required supplementary information. This includes your management discussion and analysis, and there are two schedules in the back related to the net pension liability as well as its funding. The supplementary information is the responsibility of management, and we have performed limited procedures in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Finally, the last paragraph informs the reader that the financial statement package also includes a transmittal letter and a supplementary schedule about assessed valuations. This information is for additional purposes and is not covered by the audit as the information does not tie back to the financial statements themselves. Turning to page 14 of the cash flow statement, our cash and cash equivalents increased just over $2.3 million this year compared to a decrease in the prior year of about $1.5 million, a total difference of about $3.85 million. In the current year, and again, current year for us is June 30, 22 at this point, we issued new debt of just over $7.5 million, and we paid down old debts of nearly $5 million. In addition, our payments to vendors decreased nearly $600,000, primarily due to decreases in consulting expenses and costs under the stipulated agreement. In addition, we received $400,000 in deposits and other receipts, including a large deposit from SDG&E and receipts from the wastewater arrearage payment program. Our investment income, we generated $6,103 in investment income. That's compared to $24,546 in the previous year. Consistent with the previous year, and it's no surprise that our investment income would continue to be down as we drew down the construction funds through the last several years. Most of the district's operational cash is maintained in its checking account. with lesser amounts in payroll and LAIF. So this is where our interest income is generated from. Capital contributions totaled $178,000 this year. That consists of $175,875 from SDG&E and reimbursements of $1,883 in reimbursements from Ocotillo Solar. Our long-term debt, we talked about that earlier. We issued $7.5 million in the 2021 installment purchase agreement while paying off the 2018 installment purchase agreement and servicing our other promissory notes. In addition, we paid $323,000 in interest expense, and that includes $77,900 in issuance costs related to the new debt. Our proceeds from the sale of capital assets, in the current year, we sold a 1979 Ford truck, a 2004 custom coach fifth wheel RV trailer, and a portion of the Wilcox property. Cash proceeds from those sales totaled just over $85,000. Our acquisition of capital assets this year, in the current year, we spent just over $2.6 million on capital projects compared to just under 2.3 in the previous year. The largest projects were production well 2, the wastewater treatment plant rehab, the bending elbow pipeline, well 11 electric upgrades, and several smaller projects and equipment, including the skid steer loader and a trailer. Our property taxes and assessments, we collected almost $73,000 in the current year, which is very consistent with the $72,451 that we collected in the previous year. From operations, we actually generated $2.3 million in the current year, which is about 1.06 million more than the 1.3 million that we generated in the previous year. As discussed previously, our payments to suppliers included administrative costs incurred under the stipulated agreement, including consulting, pumping, and an air quality study, all of which were less in the current year than they were in the previous year. On top of that, again, we received the additional deposits and other operating receipts. That is what I had planned for you today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those. And if somebody can tell me how to stop sharing, I would happily do that.
I think they'll take it back from you, Mr. Rizzi. Does anybody have any questions? I think the agency committee did review the audit. Do you want to speak to that, Tina?
Yeah, I think we reviewed it, what was that, last week? And we didn't find anything that was an issue for us.
Yeah, I think we were recommending acceptance of the audit.
Yeah, from my perspective, it was kind of a pleasant surprise. My favorite pages in the audit are kind of the net income related, income statement related documents. And our version's got a long title, statement of operations, blah, blah, blah. But, we have what, 1.3 million-ish in net income. Mike described where that came from, a lot of reduced expenses, but it's a good year. We're not banking on that in the future. But all a successful year. We will put that money to use. So that's the version, that's the example of the penny saved is the penny earned. Right? We didn't spend it, so what's there? Right?
We were overall quite pleased with the audit. I think some of the recommendations were discussed. And going down the road, we feel that the audit was fair and that we recommend that the board approve and accept the audit as provided. So, going forward, is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
So,
do I have a second? Thank you. Motion to accept the audit. as presented. Any other questions or comments? I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we're good to go. Thank you, Mr. Rizzi. Appreciate
Thank
your time.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. The one thing that I wanted to point out, is kind of just a last minute pointer, and to build on what Jeff was saying, which is that, you've generated the last 2 years positive cash flow from operations. Many districts have the ability to lose money from operations and make it up with their investment portfolio or their ability to assess tax. And so you're operating in a positive cash flow manner, without those benefits. So I think that's a job well done.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We are very pleased with our general manager. Thank you.
And then, Madam President, I have to do my standard disclaimer. Mr. Zizzi and I went to high school together. He was 1 year behind me, I guess you'd say, maybe 1 year younger. He was a wrestler, I was a basketball player, and the wrestling facility and the basketball gym were right next to each other. So once or twice a day, the wrestling doors would fly open and this 130-degree heat would come out, and the worst stink possible for all the stinky wrestlers. It's like they were there like voluntarily, they were having fun. It never made sense to me, but it's just good to see the hype has continued on.
I'm happy to report I smell better.
Yeah, good to see you again, Ryan. Good to see you.
All right, again, hey, thanks for the opportunity to be with you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, and thanks to Neil.
All right, and thank you, Jessica. Bye now.
Bye.
All right, so we're flipping back to item 2B, the 2023-24 budget. I know it was discussed at the last meeting. And then we worked on it a little more. And that was also part of our ABC committee meeting last week. And Jessica, would you like to tell us a little bit about where we're at?
Sure, of course. So presented in the packet is our draft budget for the fiscal year 23 and 24. So this would go into effect July 1st. Pretty much, I'll just do a quick overview. So this just includes our operating funds. It does not include the fiduciary funds, which would be the community facilities district, which are tracked separately. So we did put together our full board package. Thank you, Jeff, for getting your letters in. So there's table of contents. We have some letters from the general manager. So I don't know if the board got a chance to fully review these. If you have any corrections or comments, feel free to bring them up. Just kind of went over our goals and objectives for the upcoming fiscal year. Talk about some current events going on with the district. The next letter from the general manager is a prior year in review, which would be the current fiscal year ending June 30th. And also a little bit about what we have planned in the upcoming fiscal year. So a look at future revenues. We did have the Prop 218. We have the increases that are going into effect on July 1st. And, staff's continuing to monitor changes in consumption. Property tax revenues expected to stay the same. On the expenses end, we included our water master and groundwater management expenses. All programs are expected to be fully funded, as well as all of our CIP programs. So coming up in the next fiscal year, we have our finishing production well 2, aka 5-15, some pipeline and manholes, also the grant work under the Prop 68 grant and the tank and motor grant. Also potential, not potential, but pipeline replacements once we get that EPA money in. And then Next, we have an organizational chart for the next fiscal year. We do have a TBD on the district engineer part. Not really sure what exactly we are going to find there. And the only change from the prior fiscal year is we now have 2 full-time customer service reps. So we have moved Ms. Manzano to full-time. She has been such an asset to us, worth every penny. And Val is looking at retirement here in the next couple of years. So that's really the only staffing change that we anticipate, is just kind of getting ready for the transition there.
Jessica, hold on a minute. Diane has a question.
Yes.
Thanks. I think this is more for Jeff, perhaps. I think I'm lacking some background. The letters, the 2 letters that you wrote, Jeff, are addressed to ratepayers and investors of WWG. So,
like bondholders, yeah.
right, so this is used like when we're applying for a bond. This is part of an application.
Honestly, the format of these letters, I inherited, and it just kind of continued to carry through those titles. You know, Lyle was a big helper and contributor to these letters in past years, and so, Lyle was so, and had emphasized our credit worthiness and maintaining the right face to potential investors. So that's just the way he decided to, honestly, to address the letters. So.
But it could be used.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of a way.
So it's really, in terms of bondholders would be a more accurate term, I would say, instead of investors, but that was just in terms of that title.
Thank you.
Okay. Go forward, Jessica. Oh, and so Val's plans are to retire not soon, but in a couple of years.
In less than 24 months.
Okay.
We're still ironing that down. I think right now it's roughly 18, like October of 24-ish.
Thanks.
And Val did take a month's vacation and everything went smooth.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Coming back. All right, so here's the main bread and butter of the numbers. So I did include what was budgeted this current year ending June 30th and our projected numbers. Obviously these are not the final fiscal year 23 numbers, but I have reviewed all the accounts and it seems like that's where they will end up. So we did budget for our rate increases. In terms of revenues, nothing else really significant except the Ocotillo Solar bulk water purchases are expected to end. So while it looks like this year they'll give us about 60 grand, we anticipate that number to be a lot lower in the future. No other major significant changes in revenues. On expenses, so the general manager does choose a inflator based on the CPI. So we chose to go with March. I think that's a good standard going forward because it still gives us a couple months buffer to get all these documents in line. So as of March, the inflation index was 5.3%. So we did include that as a general inflator on all general expenses. We do have some adjustments to that. One being fuel has been going up consistently. Actually, from my research, there was a slight decrease, but year over year, we decided to be conservative on that estimate. We have the air quality study, which the board has already approved the contract for on that. We do expect higher audit fees with these upcoming grants. They may be subject to individual audits. Let's see. Financial consulting, we included some amount for the next rate study. We should be starting on that this next fiscal year. In terms of insurance, JPIA has given us, I think, roughly a 10% increase on general programs Workers' comp increases with wages, but our rates are really good because we have very low losses in the workers' comp area. And going forward, salaries. So we did include the inflation adjustment plus a 5% merit adjustment on employees that they will be eligible for on their annual review. And then things like pension and payroll taxes increase in line with that. Let's see. Anything else significant? We do have more phone expenses because of more movement to mobile devices. The guys have tablets in the field, and we have the smartphone meter reading now. That leaves our debt service is set in stone, not non-negotiable. And then in groundwater management expenses, we are still budgeting $100,000 for pumping fees, even with the Water Master's additional assessment. This fiscal year, it's well below what we budgeted. And then we have additional groundwater management expense. This would be for any projects that the board wants to take on, any additional studies through Intera. We did have a few proposals. One proposal was approved, which is that water quality study you see for $28,000. In addition, we estimate we'll spend about $60,000 this year on legal expense related to the stipulation. We do budget more than that, just in anticipation of something that could come up. And in addition, the TAC expense. So that's Trey's time for attending all those TAC meetings, doing all the coordination with the Water Master Board on technical items. And then we have our CIP, so cash projects, the BPA acquisition, so that would be the purchase of the David Bauer property. We may be funding that 20% match on the appropriations pipelines that we were awarded, some manhole refurbishments, Palm Canyon sewer line videoing, and just some general well and generator items. And then in the grant side, we have our tank and motor grant and the Prop 68 grant, and then those pipeline appropriation bills. So those will all be, the first two grants are reimbursement grants, and then the appropriations will be just, they're gonna hopefully give us a check for $3.4 million. I'm waiting for that day. And then just a quick glance. So at the end of that, sorry, a quick glance at the cash flows. So net cash provided by operating activities. So this would be just our general revenues and expenses for operations, would be about 1.5 million. And then that does get depleted down by the groundwater management activities, non-operating activities, which is essentially our debt service, and then our cash paid capital improvement project. So we are looking at this upcoming budget. It does show a negative change in cash of about 2 million. Sorry for whatever Michael just said to get all your hopes up. Right. And I did go through, so I did make an adjustment to our beginning balance cash reserves. I know the previous version said about 6 million, but when we looked at all the outstanding grant reimbursements that we currently have, you know, we did include that. So that was about 1.5 million that we're waiting for reimbursement time right now. So which leaves us cash reserves at the end of the next fiscal year just under 5.5 million, where our reserves target is about 6.3. So we can address the long-term cash flow issues as we come down. But this next is just a condensed budget by fund. So this looks at each of the revenue streams individually. So water, sewer, pest control, and flood control. You do see a lower sewer area 1 So that represents no longer getting the Mesquite Trails income, which does result in a lower bottom line on that fund. However, we will be looking at that at our next rate study, see what we need to do to get that fund back in line. Otherwise, all the other funds seem to be kind of operating as they have historically. And then next we get into the capital improvements. So Jeff gave a description on budget comparisons and the capital improvement projections for the next fiscal year. We do have our CIP schedule here. So this first page is the purple items are cash funded, the purple and black. So the black items include our short-lived assets. The red items are grant funded and the green items are bond funded. So pretty much the fiscal year 24 and the first two fiscal year 25 items have already been awarded. These two, number 22 and 23, are a pending appropriations application we have in. And then we understand that in the future, we're going to need to worry about things like a new production well, potential water quality treatment, another BPA purchase in the future. So we just, on here for simplicity, we kick those out to 2035 because we want to keep them on the radar, but we don't know when they will need to be done. We don't anticipate them needing to be done before 2035. The next page is our short-lived asset program. So we take into account things like replacing pickup trucks, equipment, well rehabilitations. And the next page shows a cash flow model for projection for the next 10 years. So this takes into account all of our current rate increases. Keep in mind, you know, we might be doing another, well, we will be doing another rate study in the next couple of years. So kind of anything beyond fiscal year 26, 27 is up for review. A debt service section, those are all set in stone. We do have a debt service coverage ratio covenant. I'm sorry, I know this is really small. Let me get in there. So per our debt service covenants, we're supposed to require a 1.25 debt service ratio, which means that we make enough net income to pay our debt service 1.25 times. So we do understand that that is kind of an orangish, reddish flag for us. And we have discussed with the Audit and Budget Committee to do periodic reviews throughout the year, just to see if there's any areas where we need to put the spending brakes on. But historically, the district has operated with far less actual expenses than budgeted. So, you know, the only thing we can do is really keep a close eye on that. We do look into some lower cash reserves balances as we get on into the next 5 to 10 fiscal years. And we have had discussions on making a finance committee meeting to go over those items. But I think just everybody being aware and planning is the best thing we can do. The next section just kind of has a grant summary. So these are grants that are either in application process or that have been awarded. And then we also have all the completed grants going back to give you an idea of those. And then pretty much the rest of this is we go through each individual CIP project and do a summary of the project and the expenses. And then the very last item here is a appendix on our water supply program. So this was something that we included in, I believe, 2 years ago in the budget package, just to explain our need for purchasing additional BPA in the future. And that's the last page. So does anybody have any questions on the draft budget package?
Questions for Jessica? Go ahead, Patty.
Two, I think they're nits.
That appendix B, page 42, it says future water supply purchase, which says we have to spend $1.9 million in fiscal year 27. But in the finance plan, we're spending 2 million on page 23. It's not in line with page 23, which is.
You're right.
34, 35. And I assume page 23 is right and appendix B just needs to be updated?
You're correct, Tammy. Thank you. I will update that.
And then a real small bit, page 30, it talks about the dates for the pipeline replacement as being FY 31 and 32, but the costs for doing the work are FY 25 and 26. So I just think it, you know, I think it may.
Thank you.
1 and 32 in all places.
Yes, thank you, Tammy. That did not get updated when we changed those around. Good eye.
I mean, yeah, thank you. It's, those are, you call them small.
They're not fundamental.
But they're
just like-
important to
yeah.
be consistent.
Or typo kind of things.
Yes. Any questions of Jessica or the budget? We did, the ABC committee did meet about the budget. We had a discussion about the reserves. Obviously, we have some concerns about a couple of skinny years. What year was that, Jessica, that we got, was it 2026?
Yeah, around there, around, let's see, we would hit our low point. Oops. Yeah, about 26, 27.
Yeah. So, and Gina, you can correct me if I'm stating this wrong. The committee felt that the budget is ready to be approved, including the CIP, with the idea that the finance committee will be meeting. We recommend the finance committee needs to study the reserve policy and the reserves a little bit more closely and make some recommendations. It could eventually make some recommendations to change things in the budget, which is perfectly normal. But one of the things that we noticed was that the reserve policy has been kind of a suggestion and not a letter of the law. It hasn't been followed exactly. And so that needs to be looked at. And we're asking the finance committee to look at the policy and see what we can do, what we need to do, what they recommend for the future so that we can make sure that we're in as good a shape as we can be. So, so for now, and I think that, and Gina, is that correct, that we're recommending that the budget be approved as stated with the idea that, you know, we could be making some adjustments. And that's what budgets do. I mean, it's a budget, things happen. We look, you know, as Jessica said, we're going to be watching our expenditures and making sure that we don't get into trouble as much as possible. So, anyway.
And I think some of the challenges that Jessica highlighted are some of those grants have match payments, but we're assuming that one of them is an $800,000 20% match. But we're assuming that because we'll be able to get that match or not have to pay that. But
We're hoping, yeah.
We have to allocate it in our budget. But
it would be a huge help to have that exempted.
Right.
Provided that we still qualify as an estimate.
Or whatever it is, yeah, once it opens up.
Sorry.
As Jeff said, once it opens up, he will be applying to ensure that. But so there are a few things, and I mean, I think it's something maybe for the grant committee and others to be aware of is that anytime we use some of these grants, if there are matches, it's our annual
Where the
budget.
grants are free.
Right.
Some form of the word.
Unfortunately.
No free money here.
Yeah.
There's either, you know, work involved or matching amounts that have to go out. So So anyway, Jessica, thank you for all your hard work. You have been doing an amazing job with all of this stuff. And also, I just wanted to thank you for the work that you've been doing on the Prop 68 grants. The administrative work is a tremendous amount of work. So thank you for all of that. But coming back to the budget, as I said, the ABC committee recommends that you vote to approve, or that we recommend approval of this budget, and with the idea that the finance committee is going to take a harder look at our reserves.
And just to tag on what you mentioned earlier, that the audit and budget committee will keep an eye on our debt service coverage ratio as we go through the strike.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, what does the board say?
I move that we accept the budget with two provisions of the finance committee looking at reserves and the ABC committee monitoring our debt service coverage ratio, and making sure that we are always compliant.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the 23-24 budget with the caveats of the finance committee and ABC committees doing their due diligence. And
I think the public's gonna watch out for all of this.
yeah, and kind of like everything else. Is there any other discussion, questions?
Do we need to add just pending and including the changes that?
Oh,
yes.
And,
Noted on the budget.
oh, right, yeah, you want to amend that so that we.
Including
Thank
a few changes to the dates.
Yeah.
To the dates that weren't listed correctly.
We might even change the investor line up the letters, that's.
And
Obviously, so bond. Thank you.
Bondholders, is
Yeah.
that better?
More accurate.
Okay. All right, so
I got all the changes written down.
minor changes, caveats with the finance and ABC committee, and approving the budget as presented otherwise. Are we ready for the vote?
Madam President, can we ask for public comment first?
Thank you.
All right.
Public comment from anybody in the online? We're back talking to ourselves here, except for you guys online, so. Anybody have any comments or questions? Hearing none. I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have a budget.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Jessica.
Thanks for all your help.
Both the audit and the budget, thank you.
All right. And big things done. Down to item 2D. This is yours.
Moving right along, so let's see, as we all recall, the Prop 68 grant that includes a couple BWD projects and then a handful of projects by local organizations. There are, an important requirement of the grant is to ensure that the district complies with CEQA. And although there are some of the sub-grantees, we're lovingly calling them, that aren't public agencies, they would normally not have to jump through the hoops that we need to jump through. Steve, out of abundance of caution and just making sure that we are eligible and squeaky clean when we get to the end of this process, is encouraging the BWD, the notice of exemptions, and other various environmental documents that are mentioned here in the packet. For each one of the sub-grantees, and there are a couple exceptions, the public agencies, the school, the UCI, it's really up to them to approve secret documents because they are public agencies. So at some point, we will receive those and submit those to the state. But as for the documents that are up for discussion and potential approval today, would be the BWD projects, Stewardship Council, sponsor group, and that's it.
Water master?
Yes, I'm sorry, how did I forget? Water master, that's the biggie, yeah, so the water, thank you, Dan. The water master is in that group also. So what we have in the packet here would be the environmental documents needed to comply with CEQA for each one of these projects. The water master those of you on the board and those of us that observe the meetings. Sam did a really quick turnaround and a great job on getting the environmental documents done, just physically done on their project. Literally turned it around in like a week or 2 weeks, super, super fast. So those have been incorporated into the documents here. Thanks to Steve and his team at BB&K for organizing, coordinating, and making sure that all the various documents are in line and that we're totally in compliance with CEQA. Once again, that could be one potential stumbling block that might make future expenses non-reimbursable. So we just want to make sure that we're squeaky clean on the CEQA compliance. So this is that step. So the plan would be, once this board takes action, I would forward these various notices of exemptions up to the state, DWR, grant staff, and they would put that on file. Anything to add, Mr. Legal Counsel?
Only thing I would add is, in addition to that, Jeff, again, because we're trying to be squeaky clean, is we would actually go and post the notices of exemption with the county and submit them to this electronic database. Just to be squeaky clean on it. And, you know, these are all pretty much do them in the back office kind of projects. So you think maybe CEQA is sort of a little bit questionable. Why would you do it? But these grants tend to get audited on the back end a lot. And so it's better to do everything you have to do.
And see, there are specific exemptions mentioned for studies for this exact purpose, right? So, yeah, you would normally think, oh, you're not disturbing the ground, you don't need to do CEQA, but those exemptions were put there for a reason, right? So we're just quoting the allowable CEQA exemptions, right? Which would be the studies and information gathering.
I understand the need to document. So can these, can these be approved as a group, or do we go through each one individually?
You can approve them as a group.
So these are all NOEs, notice of exemptions. So there's no, they're all, but they all have, they don't all have the same exemptions, but they're all exemptions.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions about them? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve these determinations.
Don't forget the public.
Oh, the public. Gosh.
They left us, didn't they? They're doing something fun, right?
Yeah.
Rebecca joined.
Is there any comments or questions from the public regarding these notice of exemptions for the various Prop 68 projects? Water Master, the Stewardship Council, PWD, and what is it? Oh, the school, right? Oh, they do their own. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve these NOEs.
I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Tammy. So we have a motion on the floor, second, to approve the Prop 68's CEQAs. And well, actually, there are those exemptions on CEQA. So I'm going to call them. Any other discussion, questions? Call for the question. All in favor of approving the Prop 68 notice of exemptions, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, got that covered. We're good to go on CEQA. The next item is 2E, the purchase and sale agreement with UCI.
Yes, this is a culmination of a year or so's worth of work. Let's see. Really, the process of going through and looking at each district property and determining whether it was surplus or not really came from Borrego Foundation. They reached out to me at some point and said, hey, gee, do you have any surplus property? We'd like to look at it and consider it for acquisition. So we put together a list of all our properties and circulated it to the foundation and to UCI and others and said, hey, any interest? And both UCI and the Borrego Foundation expressed interest in the property that's the 10-acre piece that's immediately located to the west of the Steel Verman Research Center. Literally even join the And so this project, this property has been on the UCI acquisition list for a year or so. Prior to the district actually disposing of the property, we have to go through a lengthy but fairly simple process of declaring it surplus and notifying all local housing authorities and other state agencies to make sure they don't want it for housing for other purposes. And we jumped through all those hoops, so the district ended up with a list of 8 or 9 parcels that we've officially declared surplus. We sold one parcel, that Wilcox piece, right, the 80 acres just below Gloria Canyon to the foundation 6 months or so ago. We're proposing to sell the 10-acre piece next to Stillburnham to UCI as part of this agenda item. And then Borrego Foundation is still interested in 5 or 6 other pieces that are owned by the district. Once again, they've all already been declared surplus. So in the next month or two, you will likely see a purchase and sale agreement with the Borrego Foundation on the other parcels. But the agenda item here today is just pertains to the one acquisition and the one piece of property the UCI liked. And that was the property located immediately west of the steel plant. It's really beautiful, huge mountain.
Yeah, hard to build houses on.
So we would like to, approve the purchase and sale agreement. Steve and Ward in his office helped me develop, review the various versions that have been developed. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too much of a ping pong. It just took a long while for the pings and the pongs, but we sent them something, they customized it and sent it back, and it was satisfactory to us.
Okay, so before us today is the approval to allow UCI to purchase this 10-acre surplus parcel.
Yeah. The purchase and sale agreement.
Can the public ask a question?
Yes.
Is this the right time for that?
Yes.
Sure.
I'm just curious if that parcel had any legal access or not.
I'm not aware of any, Becky.
No, it's surrounded on 3 sides by the park and 1 side by Stillburnham.
Okay.
So
all right, that was my question.
Basically, it was an in-holding and was held by Borrego Water District as the potential site for a tank.
Okay, thanks very much.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Gina.
I'm sure it's in here somewhere, but obviously we don't give them the groundwater rights, or does that matter in stuff like this?
There are no, yeah, the water rights are gone because of the judgment. Only the parties that want the water rights, every other water right is gone.
Okay.
In the basin.
No EPA associated
with that.
Any other questions? Tammy?
Was ABF interested? This is surrounded on by.
They were, but they said, look, we'll let UCI take it, just because it was physically located adjacent to the steel. Julie Gerson was being nice and said, okay, we're interested in the others, but
so
they were okay, that's up to them, but selling to UCI was okay to ABF.
That was really my question.
Yeah, and the technicality is that the land around Stillburnham, there's only 4 or 5 acres that came with the Stillburnham property. There's another 70 acres that ABF gave to the Stillburnham Research Center. And then, so if the Stillburnham Research Center ever folded and went away, all of that land will return to ABF, which in turn would become state park. So it's all kind of in the same conservation mishmash. Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the sale of this parcel to UCI. So moved. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Any members of the public wish to ask a question or make a comment? I believe, Steve, that I should be abstaining from this vote.
That would be best.
Yes. So I'm going to call the question to approve the sale of this parcel to UCI. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And there's one abstention, so I abstain. Anyway, the motion passes, and so the sale can go forward. And the next item is 2E, the letter from Director Johnson regarding the need for water master to begin testing for PFAS in the normal management.
Right. The water quality monitoring that is officially part of the judgment coming in through the GMP only addresses those 5 longstanding I'm not sure if constituents of concern is the right term here, but the nitrates, total dissolved solids, et cetera. I think anyone who's paying attention to the news is seeing the PFAS every day. Things come out, and the federal government is addressing it more and more. And Jeff, I wanted to ask you to remind me or us, the EPA sent some PFAS testing stuff to the BWD a month or 2 ago that we're supposed to do and hand in, I think, in the fall.
I saw the same emails you saw from Alan. I will follow. I just didn't. I'm not sure the exact status. I think it was Jessica that at one point told me that the EPA had a program, so
yeah.
I'm not totally plugged into that little piece of the puzzle. Jess, do you have any additional information on PFAS bottles, or did you actually get anything,
Yeah, we did get kind of an explanation letter from them on how it's going to go, and I'm not sure if they've sent them yet, but they're sending us the bottles and the shipping labels. So Alan just has to fill the bottles with samples and put them in the box, and they take care of the rest. So no expense. We don't pay for shipping or testing. And that's supposed to be a year-long program. And then I don't know if they'll give us additional guidance at the end or what the plan is after that.
Would it be possible for me to see whatever they sent you, just out of curiosity on the timing? Thank you.
So are they looking to just get an idea on where we're at with PFAS in this basin? Is that the idea behind them sending us bottles?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of an initial survey. I think, they send it out probably nationwide. And I think just to kind of get a baseline estimate of what's going on.
Has EPA set a standard for PFAS?
They did the proposed rulemaking that closed, I think, May 31st for, I know we talked about it in the past meeting, so, I think they're starting, and California has also started at least limiting items coming into the state that maybe have PFAS. So, I know, I don't know how they're regulating, but that, with Diane and I briefly had a chance to talk on Friday. I was doing a little research on it. So it's definitely up and coming, and it seems to be much more a concern for, especially for us in the water, for drinking water, for consumption. But obviously it's
And what's mentioned most and has been for the last few years is that it's used in firefighting foam, right? And I think all of us think, oh, well, gosh, if that's happened even once in Borrego, that's not a big deal. But for example, it's used, I've learned doing some reading recently, as what they call an adjuvant in pesticides. It makes them easier to spray and causes them to stick to leaves more thoroughly. So right there is a big concern for Borrego.
So these PFAS it can filter along, I mean, they can filter like any other element. And they can, so they could end up in water.
Yes, I've done some like really superficial research and what it says out there is that yes, it travels through soils, these chemicals travel through soils readily. I can't explain the mechanism for that,
You'll
but
have to.
I think
Hey, everyone's still on the call. We're trying to fix the audio issue. Not yet. No.
Here's something now.
I think that's me.
Oh,
Oh, he says it's back on the phone. So Trey, you can hear the room on your phone?
Yes, I can hear you on my phone, but I lost audio on my computer. I had to switch over to my phone.
Well, can you hear me or can you hear them in the boardroom?
I can just hear Jessica. I can't hear the board.
Yeah, I think Esmeralda's trying to get it back up. I wonder if they can hear us.
that's too bad.
Oh, the board can hear us. We can't hear you.
That's a shame.
I know. Hmm. Esmeralda, we could try changing the microphone and change it back, or we might have to restart the go-to. All right, looks like they might be dialing the phone in. I hear you, Brooke. Hello? Caller 5?
Hello, hello.
Oh, is that the boardroom?
Okay, yeah, we can hear.
So you can listen to us now.
Yeah, it's a little echoey and far away, though. You'll have to speak up.
Jeff, I think I can move this here, move the phone. Didn't you used to do that? How does this sound?
That's better.
Can you hear Kathy? Hello, hello.
Barely, a little bit.
We'll try to speak out a little more.
So we're done playing with telephone. We'd like to give staff instructions to contact the Water Control Board with regard to testing.
So we would like staff to gather a little more information about, what's coming down the line in terms of, testing standards, cost. Anything else?
Does Trey have anything to say now that we can hear him, maybe?
We're talking about PFAS testing, Trey.
Sure, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, Intero's involved in several PFAS testing programs throughout California and elsewhere. But really, the initial step is to collect your data in the basin. And currently, I'm just aware of data that was collected at the landfill. So certainly, you want to do a screening level analysis, and that's what the samples provided to you by the state or for to see if there are any indications of PFAS, and then you're going to compare those results to the notification levels that have been developed for the different PFAS constituents, and from there decide whether or not you need to do additional sampling. We are finding PFAS in unusual places, even in undeveloped watersheds. So the concentrations are so low, we're talking parts per trillion. So there is potential that you may have some detections of PFAS, but the initial step is really to collect the data and then compare it to the notification levels and see if it warrants follow-up sampling.
So there's a standard that has been set for PFAS?
They're under development, but there are initial notification levels for PFOA. It's 5.1 parts per trillion. PFAS is 6.5 parts per trillion, and PFIBs 500 parts per trillion. So those are the notification levels, and then there's response levels that are higher than that. But if you are consistently seeing any detections, we're talking, a drop in several, well, probably like 20 Olympic swimming pools roughly. It's a very low concentration. Then we would typically recommend follow-up sampling if they are certainly above the notification level or response level. And then the MCLs are under development. So we'll have some additional information on that coming out shortly. But really what they're doing throughout the state is an initial screening to see if it's a problem in your basin.
Is there a timeline for when we're going to be receiving the sampling bottles, or when this process is going to be taking place?
I believe they're prioritizing it based on system size. So the larger systems in the state were prioritized for starting in January 2020. And now they're starting to get to some of the smaller systems. So I don't have the exact date of when those are all due from a regulatory perspective. But I believe it's in the next few years here where you have to, all water systems of a certain size will have to report their initial PFAS findings to the state.
So it kind of sounds like that the screening is going to determine next steps. So to me, it seems like we need to wait for our sample bottles and get that initial test done and find out the other information that was recommended by that Dave would like staff to find out.
Just like Trey was talking about the standards and how low they're set.
Yeah.
When we start, like, I'm an old timer, and I remember when we went from parts per million to parts per billion. Like I think arsenic was the first contaminant in where parts per billion became the new standard. Now parts per trillion, 1,000 times greater. Put that into perspective. 1 part per trillion is a single drop of food coloring in 18 million gallons of water. Another way to view it is as representing a single second out of 32,000 years.
But that's,
Ouch.
but that's
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
it's because they show such alarming
No,
effects,
on
right?
purpose, I know, but I'm just saying, to
Yeah.
put it into perspective, just the fact that you can detect in parts per trillion is a big deal.
Yeah.
If you have equipment that can do that now, is amazing, but,
Yeah.
wow. One drop in 18 million gallons.
So Diane, I guess what, we're taking your letter under advisement, we're gonna wait for further information. I think it would be really great to screen, I mean, if we're gonna get that process done, at no cost to us, that would be great. If not, then, we can take other steps to test ourselves, but I imagine that it's pretty costly right now because it's so new, but that'd be my guess. Anybody else?
That sounds like a start, like a good start to me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if we're finding it in our wells, that we have a compelling argument to then kind of send a letter to the water board, the water master saying, we're finding it. I think we need to kind of see where it's coming from. So.
Well, and it would be interesting to me to see if it's detected in the North Management area, because right now they're identifying the landfill, which is an obvious location, but the ag fields are less obvious, at least for now.
You would make the same argument about the southern management area. I mean, Rams Hill has
Fertilizers.
now decades fertilizers and pesticides that use on golf courses.
And it is used in malathion, which has been used for ages and ages. Yeah.
So we basically contaminated ourselves.
So maybe Jeff, I'm gonna address this to you. Since we're getting bottles that will get tested for free, can we give them samples from the Fortner well and from the Fowler wells, which will touch the North Management area, which we have the right to pull that water?
I don't know if something that far north in the Bower wells would be useful. More like 515, or not ID, the one that's over by off of Horse Camp Road, 18. That one would probably be a good place to test because it's downhill, downstream from the ag field.
Am I right, Gina, in what you read that, and give me and my other people, my firm too, I think what the state water board is mostly concerned about is drinking water wells, because they have a drinking water division. So I think that's what they're focused on. It might be that it's a one end of the valley, but your wells at the other end, they're okay. I don't know, just,
Yeah, so that.
Yeah, I mean, and I honestly, I know we're kind of taking these samples for EPA, but then they would probably, the data would become public. So I would caution that if they only want us to sample our drinking water wells, maybe we only do that, because then people would get confused if it shows up somewhere else. But I don't know. I don't know what the request is from
Probably
EPA.
with the first one, they should be our drinking water, but it doesn't mean that we can't test later for other. I mean, if it's all going into the aquifer, it's eventually going to be in our drinking water, or already is. All right, so we're waiting on more information and testing perhaps. Okay. Next on the agenda, item 2G is the Borrego Springs Subbasin Water Master Board. Anything, Dave?
Nothing new to report. Just a reminder that tomorrow afternoon, I think is scheduled beginning at 1:30 at the library. Is this open house? I don't know how many of the directors will be there that early, but certainly staff will be there. So I know that there's been an effort to kind of report on the community's efforts to expand the monitoring network. I think there'll be a presentation on that during the open house period.
They're commenting that I have not seen anything about this open house is on the town hall. Has there been any advertising of this?
I don't know. Tell you the truth. I don't think there's been any
Supposed to be an outreach. Yeah.
there's no posters or flyers that I know of.
I don't think I've seen anything on, Facebook on 92004 or anything like that.
I haven't seen the last issue. That is kind of an issue that I have with outreach by West Yost, I'm gonna say, is that it's like, we have an email list. That, to them, that seems to be the extent of their outreach. We've told people, get on our list if you want to be sent notices.
But I don't even think I've seen a reminder. I think I saw something a month ago.
There was a reminder today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No, I haven't looked at it yet.
I got one, but I thought, I kind of thought, well, of course I'm gonna get one because I'm the alternate. But maybe that was meant for a wider audience. I didn't look, they don't show you the distribution list, so.
Right.
I don't know who it all going to. Rebecca, did you get a notice about the water master meeting?
I did get one.
Yes, I actually have a comment for Dave before he signs off on his report, so I don't need to speak right now, but I did get one.
Okay, just curious, I was just wondering about, how widely it's known that there's a meeting tomorrow in the library.
I know the water subcommittee made an announcement about it at the sponsor group meeting. Gosh, I don't remember if I saw it in the paper. I think it might be on the library event page. I don't know how many people ever go to that. But the Borrego Springs Library has a web event page.
Right. Okay, well, I was just curious because I hadn't seen anything, outward that, it was, no banners in town.
May I add something?
Yes,
I talked to Jim Bennett a week or two ago about my idea of him possibly giving a presentation like, just Sigma 101, I was calling it. And that's not happening for now. But he is going to come out early tomorrow, and he invites the community to talk to him and tell him about our concerns. And if he hears enough about a particular topic, he'll bring that up as a water master later on in the meeting.
Diane, what time would that be? Is that during the open house?
Yes. I don't remember if he said, oh yeah, I'll be I don't think he said I'll be there at the beginning, but he is coming out early, I believe, and will be available during the open house.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Becky, did you have another comment for Dave?
Yes, I put it in the chat, but I doubt you guys can have a chance of reading anything in the chat. So I have, this is in response to Dave Duncan's comment or question or comment to the nominees for the alternate Water Master Board community rep position, that it's not all about the GMP, but it's also about responsibilities that a GSA would have. Under Sigma, if you, in terms of Water Master Board, and I would really, I have a request relative to that. I was glad to hear you say that, David, and Jayan talks about that at Water Master Board meetings as well. But what I would really like is a memo put together that states what that means with some specific relevant examples that would be, read or presented at the Water Master Board meeting, and also for the public. For instance, we could put it forward through the water subcommittee of the sponsor group and other places, because I don't think people really understand what those words might mean. So that's my request.
Well, that's a good idea, Becky, and I certainly, would would appreciate either water master staff or even representative up from DWR kind of giving that Sigma 101 talk, so everyone understands what that means. So there are things, like I described, there are things, you know, that are required of the GSA that aren't included specifically in the judgment.
Yeah, a couple of months ago when I did another one of these letters to, I think it was to the water master at that time, I spent other basins all around the state, and including adjudication basins, the old type, as I call it, and they were very specifically reporting on Sigma-related activities. You know, what is the progress we've made on planning and management actions, for example, which did not really get into our basin's annual report. So I'd be happy to work with. You were saying water master staff or maybe getting DWR, but if BWD wants to do something, I participate.
Well, I think if it's Sigma related, that it should. Perfect. I think that should come from DWR.
I'll add a little bit about my conversation with Jim Bennett when I proposed the presentation. He, like all of us, is anxiously awaiting DWR's evaluation. And if they say something about that, then we've got lots of good backup. So someday our prince will come.
Can I just share one thing with the board, just so we're all speaking the same lingo here? The judgment itself says that the water master will have and may exercise the powers and duties set forth for GSA and water code. So when Dave talks about they have Sigma in addition to the judgment, it's really part and parcel, because the judgment says they have the duties and powers of the GSA. So
it doesn't say may, it says will.
Will have,
okay, yeah,
and may exercise.
Oh, and may.
The powers and duties of the GSA.
Like,
So it's the duties of the GSA, not just the powers. They have the duties to do all the Sigma stuff. So it's really part and parcel of the judgment as well.
And may in that case is, to get legal, is saying they're allowed to exercise. It's
Right, because they have discretion, right? I mean, just like a regular GSA has discretion to exercise its powers in the way that the water master board sees fit, right? So that's standard sort of Sigma speaking.
Well, I guess I characterize what I say in that there are several of the board members which simply believe that the specific items in the judgment are what the board is to consider. And even though that language is there, and I know it's there, you know, people don't see that. People don't recognize that there is that, you know, kind of broader scope of responsibility and duty that's indicated in the judgment.
And you might remind them that if we didn't say that in the judgment, DWR would be very unhappy with us, because we have to implement Sigma. Somebody has to do it. Otherwise, we're out of compliance. So there's a reason there's those words right there.
So is there, I got you in a minute, Becky. So is there like West Yost asked for a 101 presentation?
I think so. In fact, it's one of the things that I was going to ask for as an agenda item for the next meeting, would be to this notion of what are these duties and responsibilities.
Right. I mean, it seems like that could be part of their responsibility as our executive. Becky, you had a question, comment? You're muted.
We can't hear you, Becky.
I just realized that, sorry. Rather than hope that DWR comments on it, I would recommend that someone from BWD contact the DWR and ask them to please include their thoughts on that, if they have any, in their response to our management plan, because it wouldn't hurt for them to realize that we might need some guidance there.
I think that conversation was had, wasn't it? About
When Paul Goslin came.
Yeah.
It's already happened. Is that what you said, Kathy?
I'm thinking that did we talk about that when Mr. Goslin was here? I don't remember now.
I mean, isn't there regulation or something that
I
says
think
this
it
is
did.
what a GSA has,
Well,
what the duties are of a GSA?
I think it did come up because we were talking about the hearing with the judge. And so it may not have come out explicitly, but it was, I mean, there were concerns about how the water board was, the water master was looking at the stipulated agreement, the judgment. So probably what didn't come out in plain English, but those concerns were there. We had a discussion last time with the vice, what is it, chairman? Assistant director for the DWR, who's in charge of the
Sigma programs, yeah.
So and I don't know if that caused this, we sent them something.
Yeah, we were all about best available science and the
Right.
GDE stuff. So this was more GDE related and not really governance. So that's why I'm being kind of silent. It seems like those communications with DWR initially was all about the David Garland stuff and making sure that gets included, making sure they get a copy of it.
We had a conversation about.
I'm trying to really think through this. Did we really talk about the duties of the water master and its connection to Sigma?
Right. We sent them the GDE study results. Anyway, we were supposed to get the comments in April.
I think I'm going to ask again.
May.
Send another friendly reminder. I think Steve asked me to send a friendly reminder, right, to Paul. Tell him to ask again, right? What's the status, right?
And I actually got an email today where the pumpers are getting a little concerned about this. So the lawyers are aware and Van Til actually emailed me today and said, hey, we're going to get on a call with the lawyer up there at DWR and say what's going on with that. So Steve, you want to join our call? And I said yes, of course.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, at some point, I hope there's a clear memo.
Well,
And this,
so it sounds to me, it's like there needs to be a training for the water master. It's what is in the judgment and what does Sigma say.
And the water master's lawyer.
Yes. Okay. Anything else with the water master?
Trey has a couple technical items.
Okay. Trey?
Hi, good morning, President Dyson, board members. Just two quick updates. I don't know if you all caught the TAC meeting earlier this month, but we did discuss the update to the redetermine the sustainable yield by 2025. Fairly technical, getting into the farm process of the Borrego Valley hydraulic model. Water Master staff had two recommendations to reset the crop coefficients in the model to 1. It appeared that the scaling factors were not appropriate. I concurred with that. Also, they wanted to reestablish or reset the on-farm irrigation efficiency scaling factors. They currently were assuming 100% efficiency, which is not likely in any basin. So we agreed that those needed to be adjusted. By June 16th, I'm to provide just a memo or recommendations to the Water Master staff, affirming those recommendations. We're somewhat in an iterative process here. Obviously, we have some additional recommendations to the model, but we would like the Water Master staff to iterate here a little bit, get the results of changing these scaling factors. And really, at the end of the day, we're trying to better calibrate the metered pumping from water year 2021 and 2022 to the farm process estimate. So if you all may recall, in water year 2021, the farm process underestimated the metered pumping by 42%. And then again in water year 2022, it underestimated the metered pumping by 35%. So there seems to be a bias in the model of underestimating the actual pumping. So now that we have metered data, we can calibrate that in the model. And this was the number one issue that was previously identified in the model, is that the pumping wasn't accurate per se. So we're working on this. I will go ahead and submit a letter on the 16th. I'll provide it to Jeff and the board prior to submittal. There'll be a little bit of background information in there. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. And then my next announcement is pretty quick. This is unofficial, but I've been coordinating with Department of Water Resources a little bit. And it's my current understanding that DWR intends to fly an airborne geophysical survey of the basin in the fall. This is part of a program of flying all of the critically overdraft basins in the state. They actually use a helicopter to collect data, initial data in each basin. I would like to bring this back to the board and actually to potentially the TAC and even the Water Master in the next few months here, because it's my understanding that the DWR is currently providing for a limited number of line flight miles, and that there could be potential to collect additional flight miles or additional length of cross-section in the basin. And that could potentially be funded, and this is in initial stages, from some of the Prop 68 money, but there would have to be obviously a redistribution from other projects that might not be able to get completed in the basin in the next 3 years, such as, just off the top of my head, well destruction. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, because it looks like they will be potentially flying that in the fall when they have the equipment down here, when they're flying for a project in the Salton Sea, which is our understanding. So that's some new news, and just wanted to get that in front of you. So let me know if you have any questions with either the technical memo to the Borrego Springs Water Master for the TAC or the airborne geophysical survey.
Trey, is this what they were calling LIDAR at some point?
No, this is the AEM, so it's a different process. The LIDAR is not going to see in the ground. It's basically just going to see the surface. This electromagnetic survey will typically see resolution depths in the basin to about, depending on the materials, to about 1,000 feet. And I've actually been working with the inventors of this in another basin in Arizona, and they have new technology that can see even deeper. But throughout California, their initial survey depths they're seeing about 1,000 feet.
Wow. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So if I remember right, like out at the sink, I think I've heard you estimate that the fill out there, I can't think of the right word, is maybe 3,000 feet deep. But like as you go up Coyote Canyon, for example, this might get to the bottom of the aquifer?
That's correct, Diane. We estimate that based on gravity data that at the airport, we're probably looking at basin depths around 3,000 feet. And we did hit bedrock on the most recent TSS well at about, like off the top of my head, around 750 feet. So as you go north, certainly you get shallowing of the bedrock, but this would provide information regarding not only the sediment type, whether it's more silt, clay, or sand, and also the depth to bedrock throughout the basin.
And you mentioned thank you. You mentioned the possibility of getting them to fly additional miles. So you'll keep us up on what we might need to do to ask for that?
Right. They've done this in Indian Wells and other basins, my understanding, where, and this is where we don't have any details yet. I think based on the basin size in acres roughly, they give you a set number of flight miles to kind of prove out the technology. But what I think that the technology they've done now in just multiple basins, so it's in the Central Valley, Central Coast, and inland basins, that it is demonstrated to be proven. Why the equipment's already mobilized, most of the mobilization is the helicopter and obviously the equipment that comes to the basin. That why it's out here, and might make sense to run some additional lines, especially over parts of the basin, such as the Borrego State Park, where we're never going to be able to likely drill monitoring wells. That there might be additional areas such as that, or along known faults, that we might want to run some additional line miles while the equipment's out here, and that would be an additional cost, and we would have to determine whether or not DWR would allow Prop 68 funds to be used for that, and then two, whether or not there would be projects potentially that could not be completed or during the 3-year period or by the deadline to spend the money that could be used. So it's really kind of a decision by the stakeholders, but certainly I think it's worthwhile exploring, since in most cases, or there's a high probability that this work would be completed in the fall of 2023 based on my current understanding of the schedule.
So, I mean, it sort of sounds like a water master function to do these surveys, but is there something that we would want to request of the water master to add additional miles? Is that kind of what you're suggesting? I mean, would we have to put a request in as a water district to say, hey, water master, we want you to consider paying for extra miles? I don't know.
We're the grantee on the Prop 68, so that.
So you take it from our money. But we'll take it from the AMI money or from the monitoring well money.
Are you talking, Trey, about taking, reallocating money that we have, or are you talking about second round Prop 68 money that comes from other basins, or unallocated Prop 68 money?
Yeah, President, I think it is to be determined a little bit. I did find out about this because I reached out to Jack Tung at TSS, Technical Support Services with DWR, and I was asking, would TSS potentially fund this type of service? And he got back to me saying that there was a high likelihood that actually Borrego was scheduled to be flown in the fall. You know, some of these details and schedule need to be finalized, so we don't have all the details yet. But I was talking with some other basins who have done this work, and they indicated that DWR works with the local stakeholders and technical folks to come up with a flight path and establishes a set number of flight miles. And they said that it kind of gives you a course understanding of the basin, and that now in other basins they're starting to come back and have come up with funding to fly additional flight miles. But there may be the potential, while the equipment's out here at a limited additional cost compared to the large mobilization cost, to fly some additional flight miles. And where that funding comes from is to be determined. But I think one option would be the potential to move Prop 68 funding for, say, something like well destruction that has a longer lead time to get done in the basin under the grant, to potentially move some of those funds over for additional line miles. And to give you an idea, we came up with I was working with some folks who developed this. We came up with an initial estimate of $300,000 to do some lines in the basin, but DWR will be paying for a majority of that through this initial mobilization and flights. We still have to kind of figure out some of the costs, and this is early days, but certainly I think that it's something that the Water Master and TAC and Borrego Water District should start discussing to take advantage of this opportunity.
It's occurring to me, you guys have heard me mention several times about how there's $450,000 or $650,000 of outreach money in the Proposition 68 grant, and I just can't imagine how that's going to be spent here. So, you know, some of it, I think there's $50,000 for BWD's AMI, for example, and that's one of the smaller amounts. There's a lot in the Water Master thing, so I think there are a few potential pots that we could pull from to pay for these additional flights.
Thank you, Trey. That's really outstanding news. Kind of exciting.
So I'm just wondering if we need to provide Trey with any more direction on what we would like him to do related to this. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. Trey, do you need us to request you to make sure that this is discussed with the TAC? And I don't know if Dave needs to kind of have it on the Water Master side. I just want to make sure we're giving Trey some clear direction on it sounds like a good idea to do, at least to get the free ones and then figure out what we have, you know, what we may want to do for the additional lines. But Trey, I'm not sure what direction you need from us. I know that sounds weird, but.
No, yeah, that's understandable, Dana. I'll go ahead and reach out to additional folks at DWR who are leading these efforts and get more specific information. I think that's what we need at this point, and get back to you on the process that DWR has with the locals. Once we figure that out, I think I may be asking for additional direction, but I also will collaborate with Andy Malone and the Water Master staff over there, just make sure. I've already made them aware that this is likely happening, but I think that we do need to collaborate on where the initial flight would take that DWR is going to pay for. And then if there are any additional areas that we're interested in, I can, off the top of my head, think like state park land where we can't drill wells and some of the faulting in the basin, that we have a deliberative process and a conversation on how that would occur. And then if we do need to identify additional funds, then whether or not Water Master and BWD thinks that it's advisable to use Prop 68 money, or if there's other sources of potential money that can pay for that. And then also we would have, once we know how many additional miles we may want to fly, we would have a cost for that. I don't know off the top of my head if that's $50,000 or $200,000, but once the equipment's out here, I've been talking to folks who've been running this in other basins. It's not that more expensive to take another day and run an additional day of flight. So it's just something that we'll want to consider and get back to you with some more information.
So that's a suggestion. Do you have an idea?
No, I don't.
So that's a suggestion, so Dave, this is going to be you. If the water district thinks that this is something that should be pursued in our basin, then Dave, as our rep, could ask for this to be, we only have 2 water master meetings until this is going to happen. So we would, Dave or someone to put that on the agenda for the July water master meeting to decide to tell the TAC to evaluate where these extra lines would be and whether it would cost, and then they can get back to the water master meeting in time for the August meeting for any kind of decision. And if you could change the budget, that's always. So I think if there's a hope of making the call, then it needs to be an agenda item for the next water master meeting, so the West Coast can do the work and present it to the board. If we think the board think that that's worthy, I think that's the best way to make it actionable.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you, Trey.
And before we move on, Becky had another question for Trey.
Okay, right after Gina.
Trey, I think you also mentioned a technical memorandum, and I'm not sure.
Yes.
If I've seen that, or if it went to okay.
It's coming, right? It's coming?
You're right.
I'll send it out to the board today, but it's really a process memo just to memorialize our recommendation to the TAC, just so that it's clear in the future what it was. But for the most part, I think we deliberated at the TAC meeting, and I provided them a verbal recommendation at the meeting to go ahead and do this work. But I do want to, just for the sake of having a paper trail, go ahead and put this in writing. And it provides an additional explanation about the recommendation. But I'll go ahead and send that out to everyone on the board so they can just review that and approve submittal to Water Master staff.
This is a hydrological model, the changing the
Right.
package, that's
Right.
Can I make a request that's obvious to all of you board members, that if you have any comments on that, please just send your comments directly to Jeff and to Trey, and not to your fellow board members, so we don't have a discussion.
And then and it's not really a question for Trey necessarily, but once that technical memo is done, then do we want to maybe on our next board meeting have an agenda item where we reinforce that and send it as a board to the water master versus the TAC? I'm just saying.
Let's look at the memo
And see what it says, yeah. Because I think that's where we've kind of dropped the ball in the
Yeah,
past.
there's no reason why we couldn't put it on a future agenda and discuss it as a board.
Right, okay, sounds good, thank you.
Becky, you had a question?
Yeah, Trey, when you say that the previous model needed some adjustment because it was overestimating the amount of water being drawn by some pumpers, if I said that correctly, does that mean, would that go back and impact the baseline pumping allocations?
The baseline pumping allocations used a separate methodology that was not in the Borrego Valley hydrologic model. But just for a clarification, currently the farm process, which estimates the agricultural water demand, is currently based on the 2021 and 2022 data, is actually underestimating the pumping compared to the metered data. So essentially, if you go back historically, for the model period, we have underestimated pumping, at least using the model, which is again separate from the BPA, and we're not anticipating this will have any impact on the BPA that was developed for the subbasin and the judgment and physical solution.
It's more about predicting water use and getting to sustainability in the future. Is that correct?
Right. Since we use the Borrego Valley hydrologic model to develop an initial estimate of sustainable yield, and since pumping was identified as the number one uncertainty that was impacting that estimate, it's critical or crucial to make sure that we use this meter data to now calibrate the historical pumping in the model. And it should help in providing a better estimate of yield in the basin.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Questions for Trey? Questions for Dave? Go ahead, Jackie.
I have a feeling this is a big question, so maybe we could talk about it at another meeting. how was the BPA established for the judgment? Was it, I'm sure there was a lot of political dickering that went on. Was it based on a model? Jeff?
The acreage times crop type. They carefully drew polygons on each parcel to determine the net square acreage and crop types.
And that was based on evapotranspiration, basically? Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
and now they have actual pumping data, so they're kind of having to, where that goes to methods. I mean, obviously, the estimates were just that. I mean, we didn't have actual pumping data at the time, so they did the best they could with other means. And we're finding out that it was not as close as they had hoped it would be. Anything else? All righty then. Thank you, Trey. Appreciate your input today. That was just really interesting, good news. All right.
Thank you.
Go to section 3, the board committee reports. So are there any that we haven't already pulled out and talked about today from any other committee?
I just have a point. I have to leave at 1.
Okay.
So I have 65 minutes. Well, I leave at 5 minutes to 1.
Okay. I think we're getting there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any committee reports? I'm not hearing anybody jumping up and down. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 4, the staff reports. Jessica, do you have the financial operations reports for us today?
Yes, I do. So I have, let's see, there you go. All right, so just a quick recap. It's been a couple months since we've looked at this. So I have updated April and May. So the last time we looked at this covered through March. So just a recap on our revenues and collections to date. So fiscal year 23 is the green line in this graph here. So for May, our water revenue, this is, yeah, all water. So meter charges and consumption was about 326,000, whereas for April, it was about 301,000. These are about 10 to 15% less than the prior year. However, if you look at the lines up here in the graph, the light blue was last fiscal year, which was abnormally high. So it seems, you know, we have had a lot of rain this year, and also it seems to be getting back to our kind of history. So that's the water revenue portion. The number of units that are used is a little bit lower. We did see a very low March, and then it kind of has been creeping back up, but I think just with it being wet year, people are using less water, which is great for the aquifer, not so great for our rates, but you know, I think that's to be expected. Compared to the 3-year average, we're pretty much spot on for April and May. Actually a 4% increase in April and a 1% increase in May from our 3-year average revenues. And then in the units, it has been down, but due to our rate increases, those seem to be compensating for that. And on the sewer line, we're still looking at a flat line on the sewer stuff. You know, people pay their monthly fees and not much changes. In terms of collections, so if you check out these last 2 lines here, so in April for sewer, we billed 300,000 and we brought in 269,000, which was more than our March billing. And then in May, we billed 325 and brought in about 281. On the sewer side, we are pretty much collecting all of our everything that was billed. We were over what was billed in April, a little under in May. I will add that, since the close of the COVID period, we have been adhering to our red tag policy. So anyone that, is delinquent, we are proceeding with shutoffs and things like that. So I do feel that everyone's doing whatever they can do, and we'll just keep on doing it. That's about all I got. Sorry, not too exciting.
Well, that was very concise and good. So anybody have any questions for Jessica? Thank you for your beautiful graphs as usual.
Thank you.
Thanks. And now the general manager.
The DPD board president executed the David Bauer purchase agreement document a week or so ago. Mr. Bauer signed first, so that deal isn't quite done. But the documents have been executed, so now we're opening escrow and kind of
All open already.
starting so we're just now actually facilitating the transaction, and in the next few weeks-ish, we should be ready to pay it, right? Month or so?
Maybe a month, yeah.
But then he has aggressively started the following program. David sent me pictures of the 40-foot containers full of that 1-inch black hose.
Oh, wow.
And he has this 300 RPM chainsaw. That's not going to do his skid steer. It's going to take the trees down. So he's actually out here this week starting to do the work. And then he's picking some avocados on his Valley Center property. So he'll be a little late coming out tomorrow, or a late morning arrival. So those who want to see Fowler in action tomorrow morning, late morning, might do the time.
Jeff, we might need you to yell.
Halloween will be going on for years. It's not your last opportunity, right?
That 360 saw sounds pretty scary.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve, for just helping us get that done. Huge accomplishment. Even Jim Wormers.
Not done yet, not.
But thank you for.
Jim Wormers recognized the significance of us getting the order that we need.
He's very,
For most of it.
that's been one of his biggest concerns, and all of ours actually. But yeah, that was kind of a complicated deal, and appreciate all the negotiations and work.
Only 8 more years, it'll all be done.
Yeah. Well, when you have that many parcels involved and they're all getting valued at different rates. Anyway.
Did Jessica say something? Was there something in the chat or something, Jessica?
Oh, just that Jeff would need to yell. We couldn't hear his report.
David Bauer transaction's done. That was my report. The purchase of the property. Sorry.
We've opened escrow on the purchase of the Bauer property.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Big deal. Yeah. Okay. Anything else there?
Nope, that's it.
All righty. Then we're gonna conclude our general and go into closed session. And take a quick break. 12:15, is that okay? Is that gonna work for you? Okay. We'll reconvene in 7 minutes. Thank you, everybody online.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.